welcome. I'm Sima Katauka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. A British man who drove into pedestrians and stabbed a security guard outside a Manchester synagogue has been shot dead by police, prompting British Prime Minister Keir Starmer to reinforce security at synagogues nationwide. Israeli forces have intercepted nearly all boats in Gaza Sumud Flotilla, including one carrying Greta Thunberg, who claimed in a pre-recorded video that she was abducted by Israeli troops, sparking global protests in many countries, including Italy and Turkey, amid rising diplomatic tensions. Egyptian Minister Badr Abdelati has said that Cairo, along with Qatar and Turkey, is pressing Hamas to accept President Donald Trump's ceasefire plan to end the nearly two-year war in Gaza. The proposal unveiled by the White House this week calls for a hostage prisoner exchange, Israeli withdrawal, Hamas disarmament, among other demands. Drone sightings has forced Munich airport to halt flight operations on Thursday night, resulting in 17 cancellations, 15 diversions, and disruptions for nearly 3,000 passengers. The incident, which follows similar drone disruptions in Denmark and Norway. A Thai gunman has been sentenced to life imprisonment for the January 7th murder of former Cambodian opposition politician Lim Kim Ya in Bangkok. The court has reduced the penalty from a death sentence after the defendant confessed. Sean Diddy Combs is facing a potential sentence of more than 20 years in prison following a high-profile trial has formally requested mercy from the presiding judge. The petition represents a crucial moment in a case that has sent shockwaves through both the entertainment industry and the broader public. The death toll from the collapse of the boarding school in Indonesia has risen to 7, with nearly 60 students still trapped under the rubble. Rescuers using cranes and sensors continue to search through the debris after the building collapsed during afternoon prayers, leaving mostly teenage boys aged 13 to 19 dead or injured. Morocco's protest movement Gen Z 212 has demanded the dismissal of Prime Minister Aziz Akhanouchi's government, citing failures in reforms after 6 days of unrest that has left 3 people dead, over 400 arrested, and nearly 300 security forces injured. The group, which organized nationwide rallies, has called for peaceful demonstrations. Israeli forces have intercepted all but one vessel in the Global Sumud Flotilla, as confirmed by both the organizers of the humanitarian mission and the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Israel maintains that its blockade of Gaza is lawful and that the activists detained, which include climate activist Greta Thunberg, former Barcelona mayor Ada Colau, and member of European Parliament Rima Hassan, would be deported to their countries of citizenship after the Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur concludes on Thursday. The one ship out of the 47-strong flotilla still sailing, the Marinette, has reportedly been lagging behind the larger flotilla due to mechanical issues. The last update from the organizers placed it some 80 nautical miles away from the Gaza's coast. This comes as Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has called for the repatriation of the 7 Mexican citizens now in Israeli custody. Let's listen in.
Están detenidos en el puerto, aún no los llevan al centro de detención. Ayer fueron 2 notas diplomáticas que se enviaron para exigir que de inmediato que los liberen. No tienen por qué están detenidos, no han cometido ningún delito, y que sean entregados a las autoridades mexicanas para su repatriación, y exigir que llegue la ayuda humanitaria y que se detenga este acoso en contra .
The coordinator of legal team supporting Gaza Flotilla has said that communications have been lost with all boats remaining in the Gaza-bound flotilla. Now, for this discussion, we're joined by Dr. Punsara Amarasinghe, Kotalawala Defense University, joining us live from Colombo. Thank you very much, Dr. Amarasinghe, for joining us. Good to see you. Now, what's your reaction towards this flotillas being intercepted, or most of them being already intercepted by Israel, and what do you think will be the next?
I think the next step would be absolutely decisive, because this flotilla has already created a huge, wider public perception around the world. You can see that a lot of humanitarian activists and international NGOs and UN activists have come forward in favor of providing food and the necessary things for the people in Gaza. And Israelis' interception can be taken as quite a defensive approach, because Israel doesn't want international community to penetrate into their defensive line. But these interceptions simply contains consequences. There can be two major consequences. I think you are already aware of the fact that at the moment there is a huge anti-Israeli sentiments are going on around the world, right? The streets are being taken over by the anti-Israeli protesters. So this could simply trigger these events at unprecedented level, paving the path for more and more anti-Israeli activities. Well, at the moment, it has already started to happen across Europe. So this is the one major reaction. And secondly, since Netanyahu's speech in the United Nations, you can see like some of the countries followed by United Kingdom, France, and so on, so have already recognized the Palestinian statehood. And this act can bolster further action stemming from the global north. So I would say that from a strategic point of view, it contains repercussions beyond doubt.
And Professor, building on that, what were the key objectives of this Global Sumud Flotilla? Do you think they have achieved their objectives?
Well, we need to simply understand this flotilla has not accomplished any of these objectives except pressurizing the pressure group through the pressure groups. This has created kind of a soft power. But you see, if you look at the ground reality, what is happening between Israel and Hamas, Israel expects only one thing: bring our hostages back, right? If you bring the hostages back, we would step back. So that has been the very much clear and precise message coming from Israel. So flotilla is kind of it's a soft bargaining, and their objective is to feed the people in Gaza, continue the humanitarian operation, and stop the military offensive against the Hamas terrorists. So this flotilla has not, to be very honest, it has not accomplished whatever the objectives it posed to be.
And Professor, now we know that there are some significant people, like Greta Thunberg, also, who's now under maybe in Israel for now. So how do you think these kind of big names in these kind of flotillas and these movements change the perspective of people worldwide?
If you clearly observe what was going on for past few months around the world, it is a question beyond conjuncture. The major activists, mainly from the liberal West, I would say, right, have come forward along with a lot of anti-war, or rather anti-Israel, the slogans, watchwords, and this flotilla. And if you simply observe the people who take part in this flotilla, right, it clearly manifests, it clearly demonstrates that. So their slogans are very much aligned with humanitarian operations. Of course, I do acknowledge what you are arguing. It gives a great leverage against Netanyahu's military operations in Gaza, but it doesn't add any more brick beyond that point. So that is something simply evident. You can find activists, you can find global personalities on Flotilla, you can find people across the countries marching against Israel. But can they really stop the military offensive? So that is the question we need to address. That these kind of campaigns will not lead to any feasible solution until and unless Hamas releases hostages. That has been the simple, firm stances from Jerusalem.
And now looking at Israel, how do you think how does Israel justify its blockade of Gaza, and what about the condemnation that's increasing or international criticisms that's increasing around the world about Israel?
Well, I'm just wondering whether you have listened to Prime Minister Netanyahu's speech in the UN, right? When half of the world leaders and the delegates walked away from the UN General Assembly, he clearly made his stances, indicating the fact that Israel's military operation will not come to its very end until they bring back the final hostage from the captivity of Hamas. Yes, of course, there are two war fronts at the moment. One is a war front in Gaza, second one is a narrative war, right? I'm pretty sure even though Israelis are winning the first front, Israelis are losing in the second front, because we have very much dominant narratives, the false campaigns, very high perceptions standing against state of Israel. I'm not going to advocate for Israel, but I just want to present to you the truth, the naked truth as it is. Yes, I do understand. Israelis are grappling with heavy pressure, a tremendous amount of international pressure, and one may ask that on what ground that they can invade Gaza, because in 2005 simply Gaza was abandoned by the Israelis, and Hamas simply took over Gaza Strip from PLO. But we have to understand who triggered this entire conflict. Where are we going from now onwards? These are the questions that one needs to simply understand. And also, I must not forget to mention, there is an internal pressure even emanating within Israel. I mean, if you just go to the hostages choir in Tel Aviv, you can see every weekend the hostages choir is filled with the parents and the beloveds and, the friends of those who are in Hamas captivity, pressurizing Netanyahu's government to do something beyond military measures. So I'm pretty sure that, a lot of critical days are ahead of us.
Yes, indeed, we'll be eyeing on that. Thank you very much, Dr. Pansara Amarasinghe Kotawala, for joining us and sharing that insight from Colombo. Thank you very much. Now we stay on this topic. Protests have erupted across the world following the detention of people on board the Global Sumud Flotilla by Israeli authorities. Across Europe, from Madrid and Barcelona in Spain to Athens in Greece and even in the UK, which is reeling from an attack on synagogue in Manchester. Saw protests break out in London to mixed reactions. Protests have also been reported from South America, particularly in Brazil, while in Mexico people have taken to the streets to protest Israel's detention of the activists. Let's listen in to some protesters from across the world.
Es una situación preocupante el secuestro que las fuerzas del Estado genocida de Israel han hecho a las flotillas Global Sumud que llevan insumos. Y ante todo, una amenaza para Colombia. Por eso el pueblo colombiano debe unirse y pedir, y también pedimos al presidente Gustavo Petro y a organizaciones internacionales de derechos humanos la pronta liberación de la flotilla Global Sumud y de nuestras compañeras colombianas.
Es totalmente un abuso, están cometiendo un crimen. El mar es de todos. Tienen todo el derecho de llegar, de ir y de llevar la comida.
Stare in piazza ancora significa non indietreggiare, non aspettare ancora un giorno in più. I giorni sono adesso, non c'è più un giorno da perdere, abbiamo forse aspettato anche troppo. Oggi la flottiglia ha riaperto in qualche modo l'attenzione su questa questione, ha risvegliato le coscienze che forse sono state fin troppo sopite dopo già 2 anni di guerra e di massacri. Quindi oggi è Colosseo, domani è lo sciopero generale, il 4 una piazza nazionale. Si tratta di metterci il corpo, come hanno fatto le attiviste e gli attivisti della flottiglia. A noi piace dire che siamo l'equipaggio.
Küresel Sumud filosu da aslında uluslararası çapta bu direnişe desteğin en sembolik örneklerinden biri. Ama Siyonizm kendi varlığını bir kez daha ortaya koyarak 44 ülkeden 50'nin üzerindeki gemiyi ve içinde yer alan gönüllüleri alıkoymuş durumda şu an. Bugün burada hem bunu protesto etmek için hem de İsrail'e tam ambargo uygulanması talebiyle bir araya geldik. Sumud filosu gönüllüleri derhal serbest bırakılmalı. İsrail'e tam ambargo.
Now we move on. Russian President Vladimir Putin has praised US President Donald Trump, calling him a comfortable conversational partner who knows how to listen and hear while at a Valdai discussion club in Sochi. Let's listen in.
Мы там не говорили с президентом Трампом практически ни о каких вопросах, даже двухсторонней повестки, говорили только о возможностях и способах урегулирования украинского кризиса. В целом это уже хорошо. На мой взгляд, президент Трамп, мы знакомы с ним давно, он так любит и ипотировать немножко, мы все это видим, во всем мире это видят. Но он, в принципе, такой человек, который умеет слушать, как ни странно. Слушать, слышит, реагирует.
Now, Putin has also noted that the August summit in Alaska demonstrated Trump's ability to engage constructively, particularly on the issue of Ukraine with Russia. He has said that Moscow remains open to continued dialogue and urged Kyiv to return to the negotiating table. Here's what he has said.
То, что мы предприняли попытку поискать и найти возможные варианты решения украинского кризиса, на мой взгляд, это неплохо. Мы просто реально говорили о возможных вариантах урегулирования. Вы понимаете, говорили так достаточно открыто, по-честному говорили. Вот чего из этого получится, я не знаю. Но мы готовы продолжать эту дискуссию. Пока, к сожалению, прекратить боевые действия не удалось. Но ответственность за это лежит не на большинстве, за то, что не удалось прекратить, а на меньшинстве, прежде всего на Европе, которая постоянно эскалирует и конфликт. И, по-моему, другой цели-то на сегодня там не просматривается. Тем не менее, я думаю, что добрая воля возьмет верх.
Moreover, while speaking at the forum, the Russian leader also hit back at President Trump's recent claim that Russia is a paper tiger. He mocked the remark and questioned the strength of NATO. Let's listen in.
Но если мы воюем со всем блоком НАТО и так двигаемся, продвигаемся, уверенно себя чувствуем, и, значит, это бумажный тигр, что тогда сама НАТО? Она что тогда из себя представляет? Но Бог с ним. Нам самое главное быть уверенными в себе, а мы в себе уверены.
Now, for this discussion, we're joined by Professor Rohan Gunaratne. He's an international affairs expert, joins us live from Singapore. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, all these dialogues coming in or reactions, strong reactions coming in from President Putin, what do you make of it? What do you think he is hinting at? Of course, President Trump will hear them. What do you think he has maybe some kind of meaning towards or a message towards President Trump?
Asuma, what we are seeing is that Putin is a master of geopolitics. He wants another summit like the Alaska summit with Trump, and that will be in Moscow. So in many ways, he has positioned himself where that summit is going to take place, and that summit is going to benefit Russia significantly because the Russians have lost a lot of manpower, Russians have lost a lot of equipment and capabilities in the fight in Ukraine. So he is making statements that is in many ways going to position Russia at a point of strength. Of course, Putin also said in a recent interview that if the Americans provide additional support to Ukraine, meaning the Tomahawk missiles, that the war in Ukraine is going to escalate to a very different level, meaning he is also threatening directly and indirectly that the Europeans and the Americans should not escalate the fight in Ukraine, and that he is ready to expand and capture more territory in Ukraine. And that is what is happening.
Yes, this whole situation is now in a very, seems like we're in a very critical point, maybe on the edge of this turning point. So how do you think that we will see bites coming in from President Trump as well? Do you think that President Trump will react to Putin as well?
President Trump and Putin, they have had a long relationship, and they know each other. They know that they can work with each other and work out a negotiated settlement. These are the only two leaders who can restore peace in Ukraine today. There's no one else in the Western theater that can engage Putin as much as Trump. So in many ways, what we are seeing is these are the preliminaries before the post-Alaska meeting that is going to take place in Moscow. In the meantime, there will be some escalations, and we can all hope for peace in Ukraine, and with the resolution of the larger disputes between Russia and the West, Russia and Europe, not just Russia and Ukraine, because it's not a fight just between Russia and Ukraine. The entire Europe, in many ways, is at war with Russia.
And lastly, Professor, in what ways do Putin's comments about NATO and also the President Trump's paper tiger remark contribute to this geopolitical narrative surrounding current situation between them?
Putin has clarified Russia's strength when President Trump made that remark. Russia and US were nearly the same level of strength in the 1960s, military strength. Russia may have been even a bit more stronger than the Americans, but America's economy made Americans surpass the Russian military capabilities. So Russia is a very capable military power. Of course, America is a hyper-military power today. And what is important is that all parties sit at the table and engage in negotiations where there will be peace. Because if there's peace in Europe, there can be peace globally.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Professor Rohan Gunaratna, for sharing that insight. Now we stay in Europe. Police have now identified the assailant involved in yesterday's deadly attack outside a synagogue in Manchester. He has been named as Jihad al-Shami, who is a British citizen of Syrian descent. According to police reports, al-Shami drove a vehicle into bystanders outside the Heaton Park Hebrew Congregation Synagogue before attacking people with knife. He was shot dead by police at the scene yesterday. Additionally, Greater Manchester Police have arrested 3 others in connection with this incident, which has been declared as a terrorist attack. Furthermore, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has condemned the Manchester attack, which took place on Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. Let's listen in.
And while this is not a new hate, this is something Jews have always lived with, we must be clear. It is a hatred that is rising once again, and Britain must defeat it. But Britain is also a country where Jewish buildings, synagogues, even schools require round-the-clock protection, where dedicated specialist security is necessary because of the daily threat of anti-Semitic hatred. And so I promise you that I will do everything in my power to guarantee you the security that you deserve, starting with a more visible police presence protecting your community.
British Prime Minister has further announced that additional police resources will be deployed at synagogues across the country. British Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood has also spoken on this incident, describing it as a horrific anti-Semitic terror attack. Let's listen in.
I am horrified by the anti-Semitic attack, terrorist attack at a synagogue on the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. My prayers are with the victims and the families of all of those who are murdered here today. I want to thank the police and all of the emergency services for the speed of their response and also for their considerable bravery. The government has stepped up security at synagogues across the whole of the country, and we will do whatever is required to keep our Jewish community safe. I know that there are many questions that are still to be answered, and rest assured they will be answered as quickly as possible. It will just take a little time for us to establish exactly what has happened here, but we will share more information as soon as we are able to. What I do want to say is to those who seek to divide us, they will fail.
The synagogue attack has left 2 Jewish people dead and 3 others injured, including one stabbing victim, one struck by the vehicle, and another hurt during police action. Meanwhile, India's External Affairs Ministry, through spokesperson Randir Jaiswal, has condemned the attack as a heinous act and called for global unity against terrorism. Moreover, French President Emmanuel Macron has also expressed solidarity with the victims and has reaffirmed France's commitment to fighting anti-Semitism. Now, for this discussion, we're joined by Professor Rohan Gunaratna. He's an international affairs expert. Thank you very much, Professor, for staying with us. Now, this is very shocking coming in from the UK and on a holiest day of Jewish people. Do you think that the security should have been increased since these pro-Palestinian and pro-Israel voices increase around the world? So the securities around these religious sites should have been increased already, not after these such incidents occur?
Asuma, the attack is a shock, but not a surprise, because there is significant Islamophobia in the UK, and there is also significant anti-Semitism in the UK. So certainly the synagogues should have been better protected, and this will not be the last synagogue that will be attacked. There will be others that will be attacked in the coming days, weeks, and months. And the Jewish people have been very careful. In fact, the rabbi of that synagogue prevented the terrorist, that is Jihad al-Shami, from entering into the synagogue. That was his intention. He closed the doors very quickly, otherwise more people would have died. And of course, the British police are very good. They responded within 6 minutes into the incident, and they efficiently neutralized the terrorist. But the key message is this: if you allow protests, and these protests are currently radicalizing the people of Britain, then the British government will have to think carefully of what is being said in these protests, what kind of boards are being paraded in these protests, who is organizing these protests. Are these protests calling for the release of the hostages? Are these protests promoting Hamas narratives? So all these questions will have to be addressed in order to prevent future terrorism in the United Kingdom and around the world.
And Professor, building on that, do you think you mentioned that this might not be the last attack or last such attack on minorities or religious sites in Europe? So how should government respond to this influence for countering future counterterrorism strategies, also the broader fight against extremism in UK in particular?
Asuma, you already aired the speech of the Prime Minister and the Home Minister. These leaders are very good. They are going to invest more time promoting harmony between the Jewish and the Muslim communities. In Manchester, there's a large Jewish and also a Muslim community, and also in other cities of Britain. So inter-ethnic, inter-religious, interfaith understanding is crucial. Also, we have to ensure that the online space doesn't incite violence. We should ensure there is promotion of moderation, toleration, and coexistence between the communities. We should also ensure there is an inter-religious harmony committee and a council where the leaders constantly meet and promote voices of commonality, of moderation, so that people do not develop such hate to the point where they will go and kill those of other faiths simply because they have heard these slogans that Jews must be killed or Muslims must be killed. So there must be leadership from both communities. It is not only a challenge for governments, although government is primarily responsible for preventing terrorism.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Professor Rohan Gunaratna for joining us and sharing your insight throughout our news all the way from Singapore. Thank you very much. Now we move on to North America as the United States enters the second day of a government shutdown. President Donald Trump warns that federal workers could be fired and projects cut if the deadlock continues. He also floated the possibility that Americans might receive rebate checks funded by new tariff revenues. Speaking to a White House correspondent, the president has blamed Democrats in Congress for the stalemate and has referenced a memo from the Office of Management and Budget that raised the prospect of firings. Let's listen in.
It could be firings, and that's their fault, and it could also be other things. I mean, we could cut projects that they wanted, favorite projects, and they'd be permanently cut. So you could say, a lot of people are saying Trump wanted this, that I wanted this closing, and I didn't want it. But a lot of people are saying it because I'm allowed to cut things that should have never been approved in the first place, and I will probably do.
Additionally, the president has also pointed to new tariff revenues, saying they were just starting to take effect, but could eventually reach as much as $1 trillion a year. He also added that part of those funds would be used to pay down the government's debt, which he warned could rise to $38 trillion. Furthermore, on the issue of layoffs, the White House press secretary has claimed that thousands of jobs could be affected, stressing that the officials at the Office of Management and Budget at the White House are now forced to prepare for this scenario. Let's listen in.
Good. We're on day 2, unfortunately, of a government shutdown. The president, the vice president, the entire team here will continue to work and talk to members on the Hill to try and come to a resolution, to try to encourage Democrats to muster up the courage to do the right thing. And we believe there will be a vote taking place tomorrow, and we hope that vote will lead to the government reopening. That's what the president wants to see, and that's what we're working on today. Look, we're going to look at agencies that don't align with the administration's values, that we feel are a waste of the taxpayer dollar. And look, unfortunately, these conversations are happening because we don't have any money coming into the federal government right now. And so the president wants to be a good steward of the American taxpayer dollar during a time when our balance sheet is looking very grim because the Democrats chose to shut the government down.
The shutdown was triggered at midnight on September 30th, when Democrats and Republicans failed to reach a deal to fund government operations into the new fiscal year. Democrats demanded that any funding bill must include an extension of health subsidies due to expiring at year's end, whereas Republicans argued that the two issues should be dealt separately. Both sides are continuing to blame one another for the deadlock. Moreover, Republican leaders have accused Democrats of making unrealistic demands, including what they describe as a $1.5 trillion proposal for immigration spending. They have also urged Democrats to end what they call temper tantrums and return to negotiations on national priorities. Let's listen in.
Made a decision that they would rather give taxpayer-funded benefits to illegal aliens than to keep the doors open for the American people, to keep vital services, veteran services, healthcare and nutrition for women, infants, and children. They would rather not pay the troops and TSA agents and Border Patrol agents. They would rather stop services of FEMA in the middle of a hurricane season than to do the right thing for partisan political purposes. It is selfish, it is reprehensible, and it is exactly the opposite of what they have all said themselves in their own words very passionately every day until now.
Businesses do this all the time. A small business, whether it's good times or bad, has to sit down and figure out how to make the budget work. Washington needs to do the same thing. And that means House Democrats and Senate Democrats need to stop holding temper tantrums, stop making $1.5 trillion demands for illegal alien funding, and vote to open up the government, release the hostages, and let's go get back to a negotiation over what the priorities of this country really should be.
In response, the Democratic House Minority Leader has criticized both the president and Republicans, saying they have refused to engage in serious discussions since a White House meeting earlier in the week. Let's listen in.
This is day 2 of Donald Trump's shutdown, but it's day 256 of the chaos that the Trump presidency has unleashed on the American people. Republicans have shut the government down because they don't want to provide health care to working class Americans. House Democrats continue to be here on duty. House Republicans are on vacation. We are ready, we are willing, we are able to sit down with anyone, anytime, any place, including the president and the vice president, to try to find a path forward to reopen the government, enact a spending agreement that actually meets the needs of the American people while at the same time addressing the Republican health care crisis.
The Democratic leader has further insisted that Democrats are pushing for a permanent extension of Affordable Care Act tax credits, which he said would provide relief for working-class Americans. He has also slammed Republicans for passing what he described as the largest cuts to Medicaid in U.S. history, along with deep cuts to nutrition programs for children, seniors, and veterans. He has said that these moves were made to fund permanent tax breaks for billionaire donors. The Democratic leader has further warned that without action, more than 20 million Americans could face steep increases in healthcare premiums, co-pays, and deductibles. Now for this discussion, we're joined by Sumit Ganguly. He's an American political scientist, joins us live from Palo Alto. Sorry for that pronunciation there, but thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, how are these different priorities of Democrats and Republicans affecting U.S. and what are the consequences for Americans there?
The consequences are quite serious for any number of federal workers, almost 750,000, who many of whom will have to go to work without a paycheck. And this can cause considerable hardship for many families across the country. This will place a significant financial burden on them unless an accord is reached fairly quickly between the two parties.
And how might President Trump's warning of potential federal worker layoffs further layoffs cuts to project impact the public confidence in his government's ability to resolve such impasses?
Well, certainly amongst federal workers, this will lead to a loss of support for Trump amongst those who happen to have supported him. But the Democrats need to make clear to the American public the extraordinary costs of this budget impasse, and above all, to link it to possible shrinkages of the federal workforce. I can understand that the Democrats and Republicans have profound differences about spending and spending priorities, but they should, under no circumstances, are hapless federal workers should be held hostage or their jobs should be placed at risk for no fault of theirs.
And what role do tariffs and the projected revenue from them play in current president's approach to addressing the shutdown? How realistic is his expectations or his comments?
Even if he hands out $1,000 or $2,000 to each individual, that will only make a marginal dent on the finances of these people, because that would fall considerably short of the salaries that these workers earn. In any case, the irony is that these tariffs have been borne by the American people, and the cost has not been passed on to foreigners, only indirectly. Directly, what's happening is, with the increased cost of any number of goods coming into this country, it's the American consumer who's paying a much higher price for a range of goods that are consumed on a routine basis.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Sumit Ganguly for joining us and sharing your insight as an American political scientist. Thank you very much. Now, this is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world.